Thanks, folks. So there's a few faces in here I know. Quite a lot I don't, so that's great. I think, first of all, I'll just carry on really from where Eve left off. Why am I here and why am I talking to you? So I actually started off in a smaller version of CRM really, which is just complaints management. So go back sort of 14 years, these big CRM systems, they just weren't really an option because you were looking at really big, really expensive systems. The likes of Dynamics just weren't there. As soon as you see Dynamics on the horizon, you see the flexibility of something like that. The small ISVs really didn't have a chance, so that's where the idea of actually swapping across to something like Dynamics CRM really made sense. So about the last 8 years, I've worked with Dynamics CRM and nothing else. I said nothing else. Things that support CRM, so bits of SharePoint and various EDM systems and portals and mobile apps and things like that, but always with Dynamics as a core. And that concept really of using Dynamics as a core is going to run straight through this whole presentation. I think other than CRM2, CRM1, a bit shaky. I've basically worked with all those versions now of CRM, and they've got progressively better. And one of the things that we'll look at later is just how much development Microsoft are really putting into this product right now. My personal skill set, I've really run the gauntlet from actually being hands-on, building CRM systems, to managing teams of people that are building CRM systems, from consultants through developers. So I've seen most of the spectrum of a CRM implementation, the good and the bad. So hopefully I can share some of that with you, and we'll get some Q&As at the end, and hopefully I can really give you a steer if you've any specific questions. As Eve's already said, really the last few years, the last 5 years, have been really focused on housing. Dynamics can deliver such huge benefit to any organisation, but housing really did step up and say, we need this system. We need a system that's capable of pulling together all of our processes, and they've really embraced Dynamics CRM. You already mentioned I've worked with quite a bit of the G15, but actually outside of housing, I have done a lot of work in the past with local authorities, big commercials, quite a wide range. Housing is a recent thing for me. Okay, so for those of us, some of us maybe already decided to go down the Dynamics route, some of us may be thinking about it. I think it's worth just talking a little bit about why we are choosing this platform and why I'm here talking about it. Certainly within housing at the moment, we really are in a state of change. We are being challenged on our budgets, it's all getting a little tight, and we're trying to diversify. In other organisations, I'm sure it's exactly the same. What you need is a system that's flexible enough to cope with change. I certainly know through the housing associations specifically, they're used to big, monstrous systems that don't flex very well. Dynamics is unusual. It's a big system. It's an enterprise level system, but it is very flexible and it's capable of coping with that change. Digital channel shift. Everyone's talking about it. Everybody wants to do it, but which systems, which platforms really support that well? Dynamics is certainly one of those. You've got an array of tools out of the box. You've got an array of third-party applications, and I know my friends on the front row here are going to talk a lot about that in their presentation. But that ability of moving your channels, getting away from the old-fashioned channel, getting out there onto the web, Dynamics is fantastic for it. A lot of us have, the industry's been through best of breed. It tried it before and it failed, and the reason it failed before was because integration wasn't good enough. We've tried big monstrous systems, big, the SAPs of this world that do everything in one box, and we found them difficult to work with. We're now in an interesting place with the market, really. Dynamics is a big system, it's flexible, but it's also very good at integrating. So if there's really a system that you've got that you think is best of breed, we can't beat it, we can't redevelop it in CRM, CRM will integrate it. And that's a real powerful thing that it can deliver. I mean, we were talking earlier, a lot of people are really seeing CRM as the core, as the hub of their business. The obvious one, Microsoft infrastructure. Most of us, I'm sure everybody in this room is probably running totally on a CRM ecosystem. If I was a Microsoft person stood here, I would have said the word cloud probably 100 times by now. They don't know how to say anything else anymore. But they're right, and what they're actually doing is they're backing that up with huge investment. That integration, that ecosystem you've got now supports Dynamics, Dynamics supports it. The ecosystems of the future staying with Microsoft, it's the same story. Microsoft are developing this with a view to moving the cloud with everything, Dynamics, Office, the whole works are moving to the cloud. One of the big things about Dynamics, and you look at some of the other CRM platforms available, they have specific skill sets. We've probably got some people in here who maybe use Orchard CRM and things like that. You've really got to know those platforms, whereas Microsoft, it's standard .NET technology. It's the sort of technologies that IT departments probably already have people in place that are capable of actually developing this platform. And again, I'm pretty sure that's something that my colleagues down here know about. There's a large choice of vendors out there. We talk about housing systems. You've got the big ones. You've got the Orchards. You've got the Northgates. Difficult to go elsewhere for the skill sets. It's difficult to go elsewhere if you need some professional services. Microsoft very rarely sell this stuff direct. They go through partners, which gives you a huge choice in where you can go. You can go to Eve. She can find you people. She can put them in place. You're not locked into a single supplier, and that makes a big difference when it comes to how you can deploy this system. And finally, I've mentioned it to a few people already, Microsoft's actual pace of development of CRM is quite frightening. I work in this every single day and I can't keep up. It really, I've never seen them so aggressive in developing a platform. So actually, it's not working. Oh, we're going, come on. There we go. If we look at the releases we've had, so I picked it up, CRM 3, 2005. We've gone a couple of years, CRM 4. CRM 4 was really the big release. That's where it started gaining momentum. 2011, fabulous. That was Microsoft's XP of the CRM world. It really did. It sorted things out. Everybody loved it. It was stable. It was brilliant. And actually, it was familiar. It was really familiar. We got on to 2013, and they changed the interface, which is a big step for some people, but it needed to happen. It's now great for tablets and it's great for mobile platforms in general. And then they started to accelerate, because once they'd got onto that new platform, they could just start throwing in functionality, and that's what they're doing now. So you can see, we go from 2013 straight away. We've got another release at the end of 2014. 2015 update 1. They needed to give it a different name. It was another full function release. It wasn't just an update. And now we're running into 2016, and that pace of development is going to continue. We're looking at 2 major releases a year for the cloud versions of Dynamics CRM. And the other thing they're doing in typical Microsoft fashion is they're starting to do acquisitions. So CRM's unusual. They wrote it from scratch. Microsoft usually buy things, and actually now what they're doing is they're continuing the development themselves, but they're also acquiring to support that vision that they've got. So you look at the big ones there, so Marketing Pilot. Actually now, if you go onto Microsoft's website, if you go onto the Office 365 portal, you will see a product up there called Microsoft Marketing. It's basically the evolution of Marketing Pilot, now put up there as software as a service. Likewise, NetBreeze. They bought it, they changed it, they integrated it into the rest of the suite, and you'll now see that up there, Microsoft Social Analytics, and again, you can buy it software as a service. Parature was basically their first foray into giving CRM a real customer-facing portal presence. This is case management, knowledge management, giving your customers the ability to do some self-service, taking the load off your call centers. And then all of a sudden, 2015, they went crazy. So Field 1 was the first big one. For those of you who haven't seen it, essentially it takes the power of Dynamics, adds on to that a scheduling engine, a mapping tool, and it basically allows you for a field service workforce. And I know the housing people in here will know exactly the sort of problem we have here. We've got lots and lots of people. They're out in the field. They've got to get from A to B. They've got to run to a schedule. That's a ready-made tool that plugs straight into Microsoft Dynamics. Fantasy Sales Team is an interesting one. we can't lose sight of the fact that Dynamics at its core is a CRM system, so there's an amount of sales and marketing. And what they've actually done is they've brought that in to do some gamification of CRM, the idea that actually you can make lead generation and things like that competitive, give people some sort of vision of where they're going with their work. And the big one really at the end, I feel from a portal point of view, ADX Studio. So ADX really have been Microsoft go-to guys for quite some time now when it comes to customizable internet-facing portals. CRM for a long time has been internet-facing for staff. ADX has always provided the ability to get your customers onto the web. Now that's integrated, it's very recent, but we're going to start seeing that coming into the offering as basically an out-of-the-box solution. So, kind of touched on it a bit already, CRM Edition. So those of you who haven't got it, probably thinking about which way to go. Those of you who have got it are wondering if you should change. The big benefit, obviously, with the on-premise is the fact that you've already got the infrastructure in all likelihood. If you've not, you're going to have to buy it, and that's an expensive cost. There's also initial licensing costs. If you go to the on-premise version, you've got to buy a server license, you've got to buy a whole load of cows, and you've got to buy those up front. One of the big benefits is you do own the data. It's on your servers, it's in your buildings. And for that is one of the biggest hurdles I think some of you will face, is whether you're actually comfortable with the idea of your data not being in your building. I often challenge that view, because actually when you get to the end of the next column, you see the actual security standards that Microsoft have put on this system. How many of your data centers meet all those? It's an interesting thought. Control over updates is a big one, and Microsoft are doing their own little bit on this as well. When you have the software installed, it's totally up to you whether you install an update or not. When you go to the cloud, Microsoft over time will make you upgrade because they don't want to support the old versions. What they have done recently is given you the ability to actually delay those updates so you can get people ready. It's less of a problem if you're joining the party now, because the things like the interface are not changing massively. There's been times in the past where the interface changes have been huge and you've got staff training to worry about. Security, at least it's in your hands. You'll all have your own policies and you can plan that accordingly if you're on premise. Performance, not all of us have great internet connections. And the one thing you've got to say, if you're out on the cloud, you've got to have a very good internet connection. Additional environments. One of the big benefits of being on-premise is you have a server and you have a server license, and if you want to create yourself lots and lots and lots of small organizations, maybe you've got a test, you've got a separate UAT, a system test, you've got multiple development systems, you can do that on-premise, it's very easy. With online, that's an extra cost. Flicking across to online, obviously the biggie, it's low maintenance. You don't have to worry about your servers, Microsoft do all that. You don't have to buy a lot of licenses up front. The minimum to start with Microsoft Dynamics CRM is 5 professional user licenses. And then all the licenses, all the server costs and everything, they're all wrapped into that single monthly cost. Microsoft's vision is online for everything. And one of the things that's really, really apparent now in Dynamics is that new features and new functionality is hitting the cloud first. And sometimes some of the functionality is never going to hit on-premise, especially not when you start looking at the way they're integrating with Office 365. Which is the next bit. So we have exclusive features. There are things now like Office groups, very tight integration with Office 365 for things like mail merge and email templates and Excel templates. That stuff probably will never come to on-premise, I wouldn't have thought. They do back up their uptime. It's 99.9% with financial penalties, so if they do miss it, you start getting money back. And then finally, the security. I don't know if the presentation will be circulated later. I have actually put a link on there just to Microsoft's page about the security. There's a lot up there, but as you can see, they do meet some pretty rigorous standards. Okay, so we've all chosen Microsoft Dynamics, right? So Where are we now, and what does our organisation look like, and why are we doing this? I'm having a guess. Where are we now? It's not uncommon. We've evolved over time. We've got multiple systems, some of them IT put in, some of them the business put in. We've got multiple points of connections with our customers. We've got multiple databases that need to be synchronized. We might have already had a stab at the cloud with some of them and not others. This is not uncommon. But I think we all share a common vision. Where do we want to go? We need to consolidate. For so many reasons. We've got to bring down the cost of maintenance. We've got to stop having so many systems. We need a 360-degree view of our customers, and the only way you can really get that is by consolidating your data, consolidating your systems. And that's really where the strength of Microsoft CRM comes in. And talking about consolidating systems, I love this quote. I have no idea how they managed to quantify that. I really don't. Every time I use a switches programs or applications, there's a 40% reduction in productivity. Now, I don't know about 40%, but I've seen it. You know, you sit there and you see people, and the minute they've got to start swapping applications, you lose time and lots of it. People get confused. They've lost a window. One of the big benefits, use Dynamics, use it as an integration platform. If you can't get the data into it, jump out into the other systems, but use CRM as the driver to move between your systems. So we know where we want to go. How on earth do we get there? You know, if you're looking at that first picture, we've got a lot of unpicking to do to get to where we need to go. The way I've seen this work so many times now, and it works well, is pick a process, pick a system. If you've got one that's already in place and already running, use it and then get rid of it. Get it into CRM and get it off. Knock them off one by one. You'll get some that are obvious. You know, if you've got a process that's going wrong, it's a great candidate, start with that. If you've got a system that's coming end of life, brilliant. Gives you, not only does it give you a great place to start, it gives you a time scale to run to as well, because you know it's coming to end of life. Maybe you've just brought on a new area of the business. You've signed up a new partnership with somebody. You've got something new that doesn't have a home. Great place to start with CRM. The other big question, where are we trying to go? What is our vision as an IT department, as a business? Where do we go with our customers? I've often found that with something like CRM, starting with the call center is a fabulous idea. Well, they're obviously connecting with your customers, but actually, if you think about the amount of knowledge needed by somebody on the end of the phone, that covers a huge amount of your business. Just by very definition that they're picking up the phone and they're answering those questions. And of course, we've mentioned it already, it's that 360-degree view of your customer. People are banging on and on and on about it at the moment. It's been a big revelation in housing recently. We've had that switch. What's the customer? The customer is the person, not the property. We need to know everything we can about how they interact with us, regardless of which part of our business they're coming through. It's worth talking now a little bit about how we then spread CRM across the business and how we actually go about implementing it. There's many areas in between here, but roughly speaking, you have the broad, shallow approach, you have the narrow and deep approach. So if we have a look at your organisation, so this is typical, very small subset of a housing association. Substitute your business areas here. But typically, this is what we look like. We have different divisions. Each of those have processes, and those processes go on and on and on and on. So with the broad and shallow approach, what we're trying to do is actually get CRM in, get it across the organisation, get as many people involved as possible. But how far down here do we go? How much process can we realistically get into that kind of a deployment? As soon as you start stepping through these, the actual size of your project grows exponentially. So, how does it actually stack up? So I've said already, we expose the whole business. That, therefore, appears to deliver the most value. Appears. I'm not convinced it does. Because you have to deliver value. It can make future expansion into other areas easier because actually you've considered the whole business when you've put your foundations in place. It can be really difficult to deliver. You've got to get the whole business involved. You've got to get a lot of time from a lot of people. You've got a lot of considerations to make. And you're more likely at that point to start running into other programs. If you're going across the whole business, how many other projects have you got going on? You hit your repairs team, they're already doing a project. No time for doing this. The big one, the really big one, does it deliver enough benefit? If we don't deliver enough benefit with a CRM system, the users won't use it. Doesn't matter how many people tell them they have to, they won't. And the other one, we've already said, why are we putting these systems in? One of the reasons is to get rid of some old systems, reduce our maintenance. If we go very, very shallow, do we deliver enough benefit that we can turn off those old systems? Probably not. So the alternative, go from one end of the scale to the other, say, you might go somewhere in between, but narrow and deep. What we do is we pick a single business area, a single process. We put a lot of effort into that, we build the CRM system. What we know at that point is that we are going to deliver some serious benefit. The people are going to benefit from having that system because it's going to do what they want it to do. User adoption there, dead easy. Dead easy. Doing what they want it to do. Brilliant. But when you think about it, you're going to move on to future phases. You don't put a CRM system in a single big bang. That's virtually impossible. But actually, once you've delivered something that really works, you've got people in the business shouting about how great it is, and everybody else wants it. And you'll be fighting people away. They'll all want CRM. It really engages the business in the art of what is possible with the system. If you've gone to a great depth of detail with the CRM implementation, everybody can see what it's capable of. We learn lessons. So if we've broken off a smaller implementation, we've just gone through just one little process. What have we learned? What can we carry forward? We're going to end up with a broad and deep implementation at some point, and every time we go through another narrow chunk, we learn more. Delivery can be simpler, so it can be. We're going into more detail, we're going into more process, but we've got less people to deal with. We've got people that are probably well initiated into the project, they know exactly what it is they want. You can be much more focused. Of course, on the reverse side of the broad and shallow, actually with this there's less chance of conflicting with other projects. You're likely to pick an area that have a specific need and have the time to support your project. And finally, it provides enough functionality to get rid of those old systems. That's really the point of going to that level of detail. A few warnings if you do go down this route. You need to really think about design, because what you're not doing is hitting the whole business. You're not laying a foundation for the whole business. You've got to keep just one eye on how the system will expand in future. Of course, we're only exposing a small amount of the business now, so not everybody's getting it, not everyone gets a new toy. We've got to start small and build it up. I think really that's the question you've got to ask yourself. How complex is my business? How much do I want to bite off? But how deep do I need to go through my processes before I've got a system that delivers what I need it to deliver? A few questions. Do we really understand the processes well enough? Because if we don't, we've got a long lead time before we can start a CRM project. If we've not got that, how much analysis do we need to do before we can get started? Do we have enough time? Do we have enough resource? If we're going broad and we're going deep, can we do it realistically? Right, so a few tips. Engage the business, and I'm going to say that a lot over the next 5 minutes. CRM and business engagement need to go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. for if you really, really want your CRM system to work, make sure people are engaged, make sure they're involved in the design. Get your objectives right, but don't be afraid to put your foot down. Be confident with your objectives. If you think that the thing your CRM system is going to be is a single point of contact and the single point of truth for your customers, stick with that. Try your best to back that up. You'll come across scenarios where you just simply can't turn off a system, and that system at the moment conflicts with that statement. Integrate. Pull data across from that system, put it into CRM. Make sure your CRM system is the single point of truth for your data. Decisions. We've all seen projects that stall for weeks on end because there's no decision making. There's nothing. We've got some questions. We don't want to lose time over that. We can make a decision. Make sure you've got the people in there that can do that. Senior stakeholders. I think this is just the golden rule of any project, right? We've got to make sure that the right people are there and that the right people at the top of the pile are saying this is a great system. So if you've got the business engaged who are going to use it and you've got the people at the top shouting about how great it is, you're already onto a winner. Digital by default. Challenge people. Say, well, if you've got process, I'm sure most of us have probably still got a process that has a paper form or some sort of back office function. Let's start digitally. Let somebody try and beat you down. There's very rarely any reason now not to go digital on any process you put in place. Using the flexibility of CRM, I keep saying flexible, it really is. If you're in doubt, try it. Just give it a go. You're not going to lose very much. If you get to one of these decision points and you think, oh, we're going to lose the project for 2 weeks now, just do it. Get someone to make a decision and try it. You can roll it back very easily. The system supports this. Delivering value. So I've said that so many times already through the broad and shallow type approaches. We've got to deliver value. But we've also got to deliver value to the right people. There is no point putting a system in and its only purpose is to run management information. Because believe me, if that's all the system's any good for, you won't get the data in there to get the data out again for management information. The system has to support the users, it has to support the way they want to work, it's got to make their lives easier, it's got to make their jobs better, they've got to be able to provide better service. And then they'll use the system and then you'll get everything you want from it. Almost hand in hand with the business engagement really is the communication. The best projects I've seen run are the ones that have built up some serious momentum for Dynamics. They've had events, they've had posters on the wall, they've had mail shots going out, do drop-in centres, get people ready for it. Data migration, I'm going to look at Mark now. I've never known one run to time. They are always more difficult than you think. Allow for the time, allow for it to go wrong, allow for it to be more complicated than you think it's going to be. You can only be surprised if it isn't. Engage the business. Got to engage the business. The other thing I'd say actually, we've talked about a few already, but use the marketplace. You know, it's great. You're buying a huge enterprise class CRM system. That doesn't mean to say you can't pick and choose from other options that are out there on the marketplace. And again, there are people out there with the skills to put this stuff in. So ADX Studio, I guess that's technically not the marketplace anymore. That's part of Microsoft Stack. A great way of extending CRM. It sits on top of the Dynamics platform. It uses CRM as a content management system. If you want to actually put some new events up onto your CRM page, onto your portal, you do it through CRM. Fabulous tool. Click Dimensions. It's an alternative to Microsoft Marketing. Email marketing, SMSs, lead nurturing, all that kind of stuff at a great price. Resco Mobile CRM, an alternative again to Microsoft's own mobile offering, which gets better and better with every release. Resco Mobile has been around for a long time, got a huge customer base, brilliant offline capable mobile client. Start getting into the realms of data migration, there's people out there, Kingsway Soft, super. If you're Microsoft people, you've got SQL Server integration services, it just slots on the end and connects to CRM and allows you to push data up. If you want something bigger, Scribe, really large scale integration projects, Scribe's there, it's already integrated into Dynamics. So they're out there, you know, there's a lot of the partners are producing their own applications. You can write your own applications. Don't be afraid to investigate the options. So I'm not sure if I mentioned business engagement, but just in case I didn't, let's go again. I think certainly within housing, we're sometimes guilty of projects that are primarily IT-led. We know IT systems, right? So we lead these projects. Doesn't necessarily always deliver what the business really needs. Get people engaged early, keep them engaged. Get them to feel like they own the system. You know, if they're building this system, if they're involved in all the decision making, they'll take some pride over the system that you're creating. Nobody knows these processes as well as the people that are doing it day in, day out. Use them, they're a great resource. Don't be afraid to challenge business process. I honestly think, as a consultant, this is sometimes the one thing people do very badly. It's too easy to say yes to people and agree. Actually, what we need to do is challenge the business. If the process doesn't make sense, challenge it. We talked earlier that I said that we've come from a background of big housing management systems, some of us. They weren't flexible. They told you what the process was going to be because that's all they could do. It's not the case in CRM. Why is a process like it is? And if it's like that because the old software did it that way, could it be better? Okay. I'll quickly mention my little people on the right-hand side. I think these are some fairly common quotes that I hear regularly during implementations. I don't know what I don't know. Typical of a waterfall project. You're right at the beginning, you sit down with the user, you say, what do you want the system to do? Don't know, what can it do? Well, what do you want it to do? Nightmare, nightmare, nightmare. We go on to the next one. Well, I didn't know that was possible. Okay. And then we want to, but yeah, it's all right, but wouldn't it be better if it did this? And finally, if only it could. What we need to do is really move the system through, get it in front of people. Think about the model office idea. It's exactly as it sounds. It's a small office environment. Set yourself up a room, set yourself up a bit of a desk space somewhere, get a small CRM system in. You can get 30-day trials. Just go onto Microsoft's website, click a few buttons, you've got a 30-day trial. They're not difficult to configure the basics. Out of the box, it's unbelievably functional. You've got tons of marketing capability in there, you've got tons of case management capability in there. But what it does is it gives you that hands-on sort of immersion suite type idea where people can go along, they can sit down, they can have a go at it. It answers all those questions, the what ifs and the if onlys and the list of questions we just saw. Get the model office in there, it'll really support your business in trying to get a successful CRM project in place. It does help us deliver because it allows us to get together in a safe environment to have a play, try some things out. I said earlier, if in doubt, try it out. If you've got somewhere you can do that, perfect. Agile. Everyone's looking at Agile at the moment. And the reason they're certainly looking at it in the dynamic space is because the product supports it so well. You don't need to spend several months defining requirements to lose several months in development to see a product at the end of the day that doesn't necessarily do what you thought it was going to do. If in doubt, try it out. Where we can support Agile, it's a very, very, very good tool for it. If you look at why I'd suggest using the model office, I've just got a few key words on there why it really helps. Collaboration, it gets people working together. It helps us with that business engagement, gets the users involved. It generates ideas. Nothing better than getting users sat in front of you going, oh brilliant, well if you can do that, you can do this as well. And that's what you'll get when you start getting people into that model office environment. It gives us an area for testing, it gives an area to be interactive. It reduces risk. People are getting exposed to this stuff really, really early on. The best model offices are the ones that actually run from the very first day, or even before the project starts, do this in advance. Do it as part of your requirement gathering. But leave it running. Leave it running through the project and regularly deploy new updates into that model office and let people go and have a play with it. The other big ones, proof of concept, that's what it gives you. It lets you go in and try something. It gives us an amount of performance testing. It makes it increases the knowledge of your users. By the time you actually come to get CRM in place, they probably already know how to use it. So, just want to think. I hope that was useful. Still all awake? Any questions? Silence. Can I run away now? Nothing at all?
Yeah, we find that we find that it's all very well and good, but the key is it's only as good as your data.
Agreed.
We use a back-end data warehouse to sit between the two.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a very successful sort of way of doing it. And we've just recently heard of someone who's moving away from CRM back to an old hand management system.
Oh no.
Because they've overdone it.
Right, okay.
They put too much logic in it. Is that something you would support?
Absolutely. I actually, I'll be honest, I had a data migration slide in here and I took it out and I put it back in and I took it out. It's always a controversial one, isn't it, how best to approach that. I've seen it done a few ways, if I'm honest. So one of the obvious options is to have a really solid data warehouse at the back end. And I think very often that really comes down to how many other systems you've got to support. I think I know a few people in this room now are looking at the enterprise service bus type models where we've got BizTalk coming in, Informatica, Dell Boomi. There's some pretty heavyweight systems out there right now claiming to do this stuff. If I'm honest, the systems I've seen that have been the most successful have used CRM as their data warehouse. CRM can be your single point of truth. And it's a good system for doing that because it supports real-time interfaces in every direction. So don't be afraid to actually use CRM. It's your customer-facing system. It's the system that has to be right because that's the information you're giving out to people. You can use that as your main source of data. If not, you're right, warehouse, get it straight in the background and then push it out. Works perfectly well.
What I meant was from a CRM developer point of view, if you just got a very simple interface where you can write back and forget, then upgrade's a lot easier.
Yep.
You know, if you're embedding a lot of logic in your CRM, it becomes harder. And over time it gets slightly more complicated.
Yeah. Again, I've seen this approach both ways. Logic in CRM is an interesting one. It depends how difficult that logic is. If you can put that logic into workflows, actions, Microsoft do give you these tools to actually make that fairly flexible. If you're coding that into there, you give yourself a challenge for the future. It comes back again to what your internal capabilities are. If as an organisation you've got .NET developers, that's maybe not a bad thing. If as an organisation you've got great SQL skills, moving that business logic to the back end, it makes sense. It also depends on other systems you're integrating. If that business logic has to feed more than one system, then again, maybe that's where you bring it back into your data warehouse.
I mean, you could swap out your housing management system, for example, keep your CRM untouched,
Yeah.
get a data warehouse in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, you can isolate that
I agree.
risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, go on, start at the front.
I have to support you in your opinion. I think we certainly come across this, that we're trying CRM to do too much that it's not designed to do.
Really?
It's not an ERP system, and
Okay.
things like invoicing and stuff like that shouldn't run through CRM. But
Yeah.
it's key to have the integration, it's key to have the data transfers working well between the systems. And also, CRM is not good for reporting. You want a data warehouse because, especially on the KPIs for housing, you have to look at retrospective. When did that status change? And CRM only gives you the most up-to-date data, unless you put a data warehouse behind it.
Depending on how you design your CRM system, of course.
Yeah, but then you make it convoluted with the date fields that you're overloading your users with.
CRM has auditing capabilities.
I'm sure
so
there's
it's not
ways
difficult
around
to build
it.
more in.
Yeah.
I'm not.
And another thing that I found very important, you were talking about broad and deep and all that stuff. My experience is that you should map your data broad,
Yeah.
develop your process deep and narrow.
Yeah.
And
Can't disagree with that.
think on your architecture for the future. But when you go into processes, the analysis has to be so deep. It's incredible because Dynamics is so flexible. If you don't know what you're doing, you mess it up for the future.
It's one of the reasons I actually said I did on one of the slides. Sometimes your call centre is a great place to start because their data requirements are wide because they need everything.
But they also have a wide range of processes. It's actually better your approach saying get something that hasn't got a process or where the process is broken to start
I think
set a good example.
We've probably got different levels of processing customer service centres in this room, to be honest. So, certainly in housing, the call centres used to basically be switchboards. They would answer a call, do a little bit, but they couldn't go very far. They didn't have the data of the systems to support it, so they were offloading those calls. There's a bit of a switch at the moment where they're actually trying to solve more of that first point of contact.
Well, we try to get our contacts on our call centre to do the first time answers, where they would usually have to go into the ERP system to get statements and bits and pieces, trying to get that through CRM. But I think it's actually better to integrate there rather than letting CRM to do it from scratch.
Yeah, so you go for a hybrid approach. You've got some best of breed systems. CRM will never be a best of breed system for invoicing, for finances. Microsoft acknowledges that. I mean, Dynamics AX is going software as a service soon. They know that Dynamics CRM will never be that for when it comes to any of the accounting.
And the other side for housing is that even though it's all customer focused and around tenants and community, you still work with assets.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And CRM is not good with that either.
I probably know of 2 or 3 housing associations with designs to turn off their housing management systems. Most wouldn't even consider it. There's obviously a need for a data feed, there's data integration. There's certain elements you can lift out of housing management. So you could lift repairs out, drop that in your CRM system quite easily. But the asset is still managed in that housing management system.
You can't do voids if you base it on the contact.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think coming back to data integration, you can use multiple styles. It's not a one size fits all.
I mean, if you do it badly, it's going to go wrong, and if you do it well, it'll be fine.
Absolutely.
So the key is.
That's right. If you look at your integration patterns, but I know what you're saying. If you look at your integration patterns, one size will never fit all. You're not going to go with an offline process when it comes to transferring a payment transaction. You need it straight away. You're not going to be able to use an offline process if you're booking a repair job because you need to integrate with your repairs people. Pick and choose.
And there's no one right solution in any situation anyway. But so many ways to skin cats.
Do you use a lot of iframes at all? Is that, or do you sort of try and shy away from that?
Absolutely. I think it tends to be whether the other systems can support it. That's one thing I do find a lot with Dynamics CRM is people say, can it do this? You say, well, yes, but can the other systems do that? And that tends to be the downfall. So you do end up doing iframes into other systems, just hosting another page within the CRM page. And it's not difficult to do. Some of our housing management people are trying to make that harder to do, but yeah, it's just doable. So I think you had a...
Can you just talk around a little bit about maintainability? So once all of your developers have finished and someone's got to look after the system for 4 or 5 years, how maintainable is the system? Is there anything that will help them pass on their knowledge or their skills or their experience to other people?
I guess it depends how far you've gone. Microsoft give a very simple rule set about what you can and can't do in a supported manner. Most of the partners will stick to that, the supported manner. And what that means is Microsoft support you moving forward. So they will guarantee upgrades and things like that. What that also means is that for another developer coming in and picking it up, they know the basic rules and the tool set that's been used to do that. It's very flexible in terms of how much you can achieve without code. And it gets better with every single version. 2016 now lets you do an awful lot of stuff without code. It gets more difficult once you start getting into coding, because at that point you've got a code base to maintain. And then it's really a decision, do you want to maintain that in-house? If you do, you need some .NET skills. If you don't, really it just comes down to, do you have a support contract with a partner? Do you keep the code base yourself and bring in contract skills when you need them? You know, it is I said at the beginning, it's an industry standard technology. So somebody who knows .NET development could come in and they can write that code.
What about the business knowledge about how you configured the system and how it's actually working for you in your environment?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you just sort of have to live with and go to your model office and pick it up from there, or
It's
is
difficult.
that
No,
anyway?
Yeah.
Put it into your requirements.
Yeah. We've got a good old friend. What were your requirements and what was your technical documentation like? Was it up to scratch? How engaged were your users? If we had very engaged users, they might have even been they might have been there during the configuration process. You dilute it. You dilute it. What I've started seeing happen now, and I know a few housing associations have done this now, is they have a position now of a CRM manager who's actually in there as continuity through multiple projects. That really helps. Really, really helps. All right.
Any other questions before we break for a short?
There was one over this side somewhere.
Just very quick, data retention and archiving, how have you approached that in the past? You've got issues of it's really nice to have this data,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got FOI constraints, data protection
Yep.
issues. How have you
Yeah.
looked at that?
I'm sure Mark will jump in a minute. But I mean, CRM out of the box, you can set up things like recurring jobs. So you can set up a custom build data retention policy if all you want to do is maybe archive data on a regular basis, or you want to delete data over a certain age. What it allows you to do is write, I say write, that's not fair, build a little expression that says every time data is over 7 years old, delete it, or every time it gets to a certain age, anonymize it, or whatever that may be. If you want to start looking at an extraction of data into another system, you're probably better stepping outside of CRM and getting another system to dip in, pull out the data, and then get CRM to clear it down later. So, Mark, you're twitching. You look like you've got something to say.
We've got set of rules back in the data warehouse that actually then does a delete
Yeah.
based on those rules.
Yeah.
So we're keeping the data, but it's been taken out of the system.
That's right. I mean, if you look at some of these tools, I mentioned Scribe, that'll do it out of the box. I mentioned Kingsway Soft, where you're built into SQL Server integration services. You can build your entire rule within SQL Server integration services and run it once a month, and it'll connect, it'll run all your rules, pull out the data you need, archive it where you want it, especially think cloud as well. The one thing I should have put on my list is actually, when you subscribe to cloud, you've got 5 gig of database space. You can grow that, but at a cost. So if you want to keep your database size down, it makes sense to have one of these tools, go up there, pull out an archive, get it into a data warehouse, hook up the BI tool to it, and access it that way. All right. Any more?
Okay, great. Thanks
Cheers,
very
guys. No worries.
much.
Thanks, guys.